The great hall of the Zyreth Empire glowed with silver light. Tall pillars stretched high, and banners of dark blue silk waved gently from the ceiling. The alien queen Sarathis sat upon her throne. Her crown was not made of gold, but of living crystals that shimmered whenever she moved. Around her stood the council of her people, proud warriors who bowed only to her. On this day, a group of human envoys entered the hall. They came not as conquerors but as guests, seeking peace and trade with the mighty empire. The humans were dressed in their finest uniforms, their boots echoing against the marble floor as they walked. At their head was Captain Adrian Holt, a man with steady eyes and a fearless step. Sarathis studied the humans with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. Compared to the tall, scaled forms of the Zirath, humans looked fragile. Their skin had no armor, their lives were short, and their voices carried no natural command. To her, they seemed like children wandering into a world too large for them. When the greetings ended, the council began to discuss the terms of alliance. The humans spoke of cooperation, of sharing knowledge and resources. They explained how humanity was expanding into the stars, searching for friends rather than enemies. Their words were calm but firm. At first, Sarathis listened in silence. She did not fear them. She did not even consider them a threat. In her mind, humans were too small to change the course of the galaxy. Still, their courage in standing before her caught her attention. Then came a moment that shifted the hall. One of the Zirath lords mocked the humans openly. "You are fragile, like glass. How can such creatures hope to stand beside us in war or in power?" Captain Adrian stepped forward before Sarathis could reply. His voice was strong, carrying across the hall without trembling. "Glass can break, yes," he said, "but it can also cut sharper than steel if shaped with care. Humanity may not be as strong as you in body, but our will has carried us across the stars." Some of the alien council members hissed in disapproval, but Sarathis raised her hand to silence them. She found his answer bold, even daring. Most species bowed under her gaze, but this human did not. His eyes met hers without fear. And then, as the discussion turned to deeper matters of trust and alliance, Adrian made a remark that sparked laughter across the chamber. "If our peoples truly become allies," he said lightly, "perhaps one day even your kind and mine will be joined as family. Who knows, maybe your queen herself will bear a human's child." The hall went silent for a heartbeat, as if the air itself had frozen. Then came the sound, sharp, ringing, filled with amusement. Queen Sarathis laughed. She laughed in a way her people had not heard in many years. The sound rolled through the chamber like thunder. "You dare to imagine such foolishness?" she said, her eyes glowing with pride and humor. "The blood of humans mixed with the blood of the Zirath? It is impossible, absurd, the very idea is laughable." Her council joined in her laughter, some with mocking smiles, others with disbelief. To them, the thought was indeed absurd. Humans were too different, too weak, too far from the glory of the Zirath. Yet as she laughed, Sarathis did not miss the calm expression on Adrian's face. He did not lower his head. He did not blush with shame. Instead, he smiled faintly, as if her words had not wounded him at all. He stood as if his remark had been no more than truth waiting to be proven. The meeting ended with formal agreements. Trade would begin, and patrol routes near human colonies would be shared with the Zirath. Humanity had gained a cautious ally, though one wrapped in pride and scorn. When the humans left the hall, Sarathis leaned back in her throne. Her laughter faded, but her mind did not rest. Something about that captain lingered in her thoughts. His words were reckless, yet they carried a weight that was hard to dismiss. Why had he spoken so boldly? Why had he not trembled before her? The queen told herself it was nothing. Just human foolishness, just empty words from a species still learning its place in the stars. Yet deep inside, a spark of curiosity had been lit. She had laughed at the idea of bearing a human's child, but in that laughter she felt something strange, something she could not yet name. Far away, aboard their ship, Captain Adrian spoke quietly to his officers. "The queen laughs now," he said, "but the future has a way of surprising even the proudest rulers. If humanity is to survive among giants, we must dare to speak what others call impossible." The stars outside burned silently, holding secrets yet to unfold. Neither the queen nor the captain knew that their paths had already begun to twist together, setting the stage for a story that would change the fate of two species forever. The galaxy was never still. Stars burned, comets raced, and new threats often rose without warning. Only a few months after the first meeting between the humans and the Zirath Empire, a shadow fell across their worlds. Strange reports came from the edges of space. Colonies vanished without a trace. Ships went silent, their signals lost. When scouts returned, they spoke of a new enemy, creatures unlike any seen before. They were called the Vacos, a species of living predators that moved like storms. Their ships were not built, but grown. Their weapons seemed alive, and their hunger was endless. The Zirath Council gathered in alarm. Even their mighty fleets had suffered losses in the first clashes. Pride alone could not stop this threat. For the first time in many centuries, the Empire faced an enemy strong enough to wound it. Queen Sarathis sat in her chamber, her crystal crown glowing dimly in the dark. Around her, the council debated what to do. Some demanded immediate war. Others suggested closing their borders and letting weaker species fall. But then came a message. Humanity, too, was under attack. Several human outposts had been destroyed. Families fled into deep space. The humans fought back with courage, but their fleets were small compared to the enemy. Captain Adrian Holt, the same human who had once dared to joke in her hall, requested a private audience with the Queen. Against the advice of her council, Sarathis allowed it. When Adrian entered, he bowed politely but stood tall. His uniform bore the marks of battle, and his eyes showed weariness yet also determination. "Your Majesty," he said, "this is not only humanity's war. The Vacos are moving across the stars. They will not stop with humans, and they will not stop with us. If we fight separately, we will both fall." The Queen's eyes glowed softly. "You speak as if we are equals, Captain. My people are strong. Your people are fragile. Why should I risk my empire for you?" Adrian's reply was steady. "Because we risked everything to meet you. Because we came to you not with weapons, but with open hands. If we fall, you will lose allies who might see what your people cannot. You may be stronger, but strength alone does not always win wars." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. The Queen studied him as though weighing the value of his words. Pride told her to refuse. Curiosity told her to listen. And deep within, something else, a quiet echo of their first meeting, pushed her to consider. Finally, Sarathis spoke. "If we fight together, it will not be as equals. The Zirath do not share their throne. You will follow my command." Adrian gave a small nod. "Then give the order, and humanity will stand beside you." So began the impossible alliance. In the days that followed, human and Zirath fleets moved into the same war zones. At first, there was little trust. The Zirath soldiers looked down on the humans, calling them fragile. The humans muttered that the aliens were too proud. Yet when the Vacos came, both sides had no choice but to fight as one. The battles were fierce. The Vacos ships swarmed like living nightmares, wrapping around vessels and tearing them apart. Their weapons spat burning plasma, and their claws cut through steel. Many lives were lost, both human and Zirath, but there were also victories. Human engineers found weaknesses in the enemy's armor. Weaknesses the Zirath had overlooked. Zirath warriors showed courage in direct combat that inspired human soldiers. Slowly, step by step, they began to win small battles. Through all this, Queen Sarathis and Captain Adrian met often in strategy halls. Maps of stars floated as glowing lights between them. Arguments were common. She wanted direct assaults. He suggested traps and diversions. She valued strength. He valued flexibility. At first, their debates clashed like fire and stone. Yet, over time, each began to see the other's wisdom. Her boldness gave courage to his plans. His creativity gave shape to her power. Together, they formed strategies that neither could have made alone. One night after a long battle, Sarathis found herself walking along the balcony of her palace ship. The stars stretched endless beyond the glass. She thought of her people, her throne, and the strange ally who had come into her life. The sound of footsteps reached her. She turned to see Adrian approaching quietly. He stopped a few paces away, respectful but unafraid. "You do not rest?" he asked. "A queen rests only when her people are safe," she replied. Adrian gave a faint smile. "Then you and I are alike after all." For the first time, Sarathis did not laugh at such a thought. Instead, she stood in silence, watching the stars with him. In her heart, she told herself it was nothing more than alliance, nothing more than duty. Yet deep inside, she felt a shift. The human who once seemed small now stood taller in her eyes. The Queen had once mocked the idea of humans standing as family with her kind. But as the war grew darker, she began to wonder if perhaps the impossible was not so far away. The galaxy turned, battles raged, and two species stood together, unlikely allies bound not only by survival, but by the first sparks of something far greater. The war with the Vacos grew fiercer with each passing cycle. Entire star systems trembled under their attacks. Human and Zerath fleets fought side by side, but the cost was heavy. For every battle won, another colony was lost. The galaxy seemed locked in endless fire. Amid this storm, Captain Adrian Holt found himself constantly at the Queen's side. Zerathis, proud as ever, commanded her empire with iron will, yet even she could not ignore the value of her human ally. He was not as strong as her generals, but he saw patterns in chaos, openings where none appeared to exist. One evening, after a long council session, Zerathis called Adrian to her private chamber. The crystalline walls shimmered faintly, casting her figure in sharp light. She stood tall, her eyes glowing softly, but her tone carried unusual weight. "You saved one of my fleets today," she said. "Your strategy prevented their destruction. Why did you risk your smaller ships for ours?" Adrian's answer was simple. "Because victory means nothing if we do not protect lives. Every soldier matters, human or Zerath." The Queen studied him for a long moment. Among her people, sacrifice was expected, even welcomed. To hear a leader speak with such care for individuals was strange. Yet strangely, it stirred something inside her. The days turned into weeks and battles continued. Then came a turning point. The Vacos launched a massive attack near the twin suns of Vaynor. Their swarm outnumbered both human and Zerath fleets 3-1. During the battle, Zerathis' command ship was struck. Flames roared through its halls as enemy claws tore the hull. Adrian, stationed on a nearby cruiser, saw the Queen's ship faltering. Without waiting for orders, he took his vessel directly into the line of fire. He knew the risk, but his decision was swift. His crew followed him with loyalty, shielding the Queen's vessel long enough for her warriors to regroup. The battle was won, but Adrian's ship was nearly destroyed. When Zerathis stepped into the medical chamber where he lay, her usual mask of coldness was gone. For the first time, she felt something she had never allowed herself before: fear. "You endangered yourself for me," she said quietly. "Why?" Adrian looked at her with tired eyes. "Because sometimes the leader must be saved. If you fall, your people fall, and I could not let you fall." Her chest tightened at his words. She had always been seen as untouchable, distant, more symbol than being. Yet here was a human, fragile and short-lived, who had placed his own life between her and death. No warrior of her own people had ever done so in such a way. Days later, as Adrian recovered, Zerathis found herself returning to his side often. Their conversations shifted. At first, they spoke only of war, strategies, and supply lines. But soon, other words filled the silence. Adrian asked about the Zerath's ancient songs, and she told him stories of her people's first empire. She asked about Earth, and he described its blue oceans and green forests. She told him she had never walked upon a world with so much life. He told her she should one day. Yet the most surprising moment came not from their words, but from her scientists. They had been studying the humans closely, curious about their biology. What they discovered shocked them. In certain conditions, Zerath and humans shared hidden compatibilities. A union, while unthinkable, was not entirely impossible. When the scientists presented this report, the Queen laughed again, sharp and dismissive as she had at their first meeting. "Impossible," she declared. "Absurd. A child of human and Zerath? It is only a theory." But her laughter was different now. Beneath it, there was unease. The image of Adrian risking everything for her refused to leave her thoughts. That night, Zerathis stood alone before the great window of her throne chamber, watching the stars drift. She tried to dismiss the scientist's findings. She tried to silence the echo of Adrian's words and the warmth she felt when he was near. But her heart, long sealed in duty and pride, was changing in ways she did not understand. And somewhere in the silence of space, the Queen who once mocked the idea of bearing a human's child began to feel the first trace of fear. Not of battle, not of death, but of something far more powerful: possibility. The final battle had come. The Vacos had gathered a massive armada near the edge of the Lyran Nebula. Both human and Zirath forces had prepared every ship, every weapon, and every mind for the confrontation that would decide the fate of countless worlds. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Queen Sarathis stood on the command deck of her flagship, her crown glowing faintly in the dim light. She had given every order, calculated every maneuver, and now all she could do was watch the results unfold. At her side, Captain Adrian Holt coordinated the human fleets, his voice calm and commanding over the comms. Together, they formed a strategy that blended Zirath's strength with human ingenuity. The Vacos attacked with unmatched ferocity, their swarm rolling like a living shadow across space. Ships collided, weapons fired, and explosions lit the void like violent stars. Both humans and Zirath fought with desperation, holding lines, shielding one another, and striking where weakness appeared. Hours passed, and losses mounted. The Vacos' relentless assault seemed unstoppable. Yet amid the chaos, Sarathis noticed something remarkable. Humans and Zirath were no longer merely fighting side by side. They were anticipating each other's actions, covering weaknesses, and exploiting opportunities in perfect coordination. What had begun as a fragile alliance had grown into something greater, unity born of trust and respect. At a critical moment, Adrian spotted a weak point in the Vacos' formation. "Your Majesty," he called, "if we concentrate fire here, we can break their front lines and force a retreat." Sarathis studied the display and nodded. "Do it, every ship follow my command." The combined fleet shifted, human engineers guiding energy weapons with precision, Zirath warriors launching boarding drones and cutting through enemy ships. The Vacos' advance faltered and the tide began to turn. As the battle reached its climax, Sarathis received a private report from her scientists. They had located a dormant alien station hidden within the nebula, left behind by a long-extinct species that had once fought the Vacos. The station contained powerful defenses, capable of destroying large swarms of enemy ships. With no time to waste, Sarathis made a bold decision. She turned to Adrian. "If we can reach that station, we may end this war. But it is dangerous. The path is swarming with Vacos forces." Adrian's eyes met hers, unwavering. "Then we take the risk, together." Their fleets raced through the nebula, dodging plasma bursts and avoiding massive claws of enemy ships. Sarathis and Adrian coordinated every move, their minds working in sync. Finally, they reached the station, ancient and silent, glowing faintly as its systems awoke at their presence. Energy beams shot from the station, striking the Vacos' fleet with devastating precision. Ships were destroyed in massive chains of explosions. Panic spread through the enemy lines, and one by one the remaining Vacos began to retreat into the darkness of space. The war at last was won. The fleets cheered, though many ships bore scars and many lives had been lost. Sarathis stood on her command deck, exhausted yet triumphant. Adrian approached, his uniform torn, his face smeared with soot but his eyes bright. "You did it," she said softly, her voice carrying relief and admiration. "No," he replied. "We did it. Humanity and Zirath together." For a long moment they stood in silence, looking out at the nebula where victory had been won. Then the scientists approached with cautious words. "Your Majesty, there is something you should know. The data suggests the possibility of a new life, a hybrid, a child of human and Zirath. It is unprecedented, but biologically feasible." Sarathis's heart skipped a beat. She remembered the first laugh she had given at the idea, the scornful words that had fallen from her lips, and now the impossible had become real. She looked at Adrian, and for the first time, she saw not just a human ally, but someone whose courage, wisdom, and heart had changed the course of her life and her empire. Adrian met her gaze, understanding without words. "The future can be more than survival," he said. "It can be hope and life." The Queen's lips curved into a rare, genuine smile. She realized that the child they might bring into the galaxy would not just be a symbol of union, but of possibility, proof that even the most unlikely bonds could shape the future. Days later, the news spread across star systems. Humanity and Zirath had fought together and survived, and whispers began to circulate. The alien queen, once scornful of human fragility, carried a human's child. It was a promise of new beginnings, a living symbol of unity between two worlds. Sarathis stood on the balcony of her flagship, looking at the stars that had borne witness to countless battles. Adrian stood beside her, steady and strong. She no longer felt fear. Not for herself, not for her empire, not even for the uncertainty of what was to come. The galaxy was wide, full of dangers and mysteries. But for the first time, the Queen understood that strength was not only in might or power, but in courage, trust, and the bonds that connected life across the stars. And as the stars turned, she whispered quietly, a promise to herself and the child yet to come. The impossible is possible, and together we will endure. In that moment, the laughter that had once mocked a human's potential became a memory, replaced by wonder, hope, and a future that neither species could have imagined alone. The galaxy would remember this era, not for war alone, but for the courage, unity, and love that reshaped it forever. The war had reached a point where victory no longer felt certain. The Vacos were relentless, and even the combined forces of humanity and the Zirath seemed stretched to their limits. Entire fleets were reduced to floating wrecks, their crews barely surviving to fight another day. The galaxy itself felt as if it trembled under the pressure of constant battle. Queen Sarathis paced within her command chamber, her crystalline crown catching the dim lights of the war room. Her mind was heavy with decisions. Every choice carried consequences, not only for her people but for the humans who had come to stand beside them. She had been trained to command, to see beyond the fear that would cripple ordinary leaders, but now she faced a different kind of fear, one that gnawed at her in silence. Captain Adrian Holt entered, carrying reports of the latest encounters with the Vacos. His expression was calm, though his eyes showed exhaustion. He had just returned from a reconnaissance mission that had barely escaped destruction. "Your Majesty," he said, "we have identified a concentration of Vacos forces near the Drail Expanse. If we strike there, we can force them back for a cycle or two, but it will cost much of our fleet." Sarathis studied him closely. "And you believe we have no other choice?" "None that I can see," Adrian replied. "We can retreat, but they will continue to strike at weaker systems. We can split our forces, but we risk being overwhelmed individually. The only path forward is to face them together." She nodded slowly. "Then we face them, all of us, together." The decision was made and preparations began. Soldiers, engineers, and commanders moved with urgency, coordinating humans and Zirath in a single united force. Sarathis and Adrian worked side by side, mapping strategies, testing simulations, and ensuring no detail was overlooked. Despite their differences, their minds often arrived at the same conclusions, a rare harmony born of mutual respect. Yet even in these moments of unity, Sarathis felt a storm within her heart. She had once laughed at the idea of uniting her blood with a human's. Now the thought returned, not as ridicule but as possibility. She could not ignore the growing awareness of her own feelings. Adrian's courage, his wisdom, his unwavering sense of duty, it all pressed upon her, demanding recognition she was not prepared to give. The day of the battle arrived. Zirath and human fleets moved into formation near the Drail Expanse. The Vacos appeared like a black wave on the horizon, countless ships swarming with predatory precision. The first moments of engagement were chaos. Plasma beams flashed, engines flared, and alarms rang across every vessel. Sarathis's flagship shook as the enemy attacked. She gripped the rail of the command deck, issuing orders with sharp precision. Adrian's voice came over the comm, coordinating maneuvers, predicting enemy strikes with uncanny accuracy. Together they guided their forces, balancing aggression with caution, strength with flexibility. Hours passed in a blur of battle. Ships fell, crews fought valiantly, and the galaxy seemed suspended in tension. At one point, Adrian's cruiser was struck, and he was forced to navigate through enemy lines to survive. Sarathis's heart raced, not from fear of defeat but from fear for him. She could not allow the human who had become indispensable to her to fall. When the Vacos were finally forced to retreat, both human and Zirath fleets had suffered greatly, but the tide of war had shifted slightly in their favor. Sarathis walked through the damage, checking on soldiers and officers. She found Adrian among the crews, guiding them, reassuring them, refusing to rest even for a moment. Finally, she spoke to him privately. "You risk yourself too often," she said softly, her eyes reflecting the stars beyond. "Why do you do this?" "Because it is right," he answered simply. "And because your people, my people, deserve the chance to live another day. I cannot stand aside while others fall." Sarathis's chest tightened. She had been taught to command without emotion, to lead without attachment. Yet now she realized that she had allowed herself to feel deeply, not just for her people, but for one human who had proven himself unlike any she had ever known. That night, she stood before the vast window of her throne chamber, watching the stars. She thought of the reports from her scientists, the impossible possibility of a union between human and Xyrath. She thought of Adrian, his bravery, his integrity, his warmth, and for the first time she considered that what she had once dismissed as absurd might be more than theory. It might be the beginning of something extraordinary. In the silence of her chamber, Queen Sarathis faced a choice that went beyond strategy or duty. The galaxy demanded survival, but her heart demanded courage of a different kind. To embrace the impossible was no longer a joke. It was a challenge she could not ignore. And as the stars turned endlessly above, she understood that her next decisions would shape not just the future of war, but the future of life itself.